What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I'll be showing you how to lock down the entire battlefield with suspension. Now, sometime in the last couple seasons, Suspend was nerfed pretty hard, specifically on champions. You used to be able to suspend enemies like crazy. They would just be suspended with no way to fight back, and the strand kit was so busted that you could pretty much infinitely loop between your shackle grenade and your barricade on Titan. This allowed you to pretty much keep enemies suspended indefinitely. It was very broken, so Bungie toned it down. And since toning it down, I haven't really played with Suspend builds too much. I had my Necrotic Grip build and it is still great, but I wasn't sure how good the Suspend Titan was. And then Bungie introduced the Wishkeeper exotic bow to us last month. But of course, like everything in Destiny, they had to time gate it to improve their player metrics and weekly active users, so we weren't able to see it in its final form until 5 weeks after its release. As such, I didn't really play around with it until last week. My initial impression was it was pretty mid, but that was a feel thing, and I knew it would get much better when you could fully upgrade it. So I like to run the multi-threaded snare refit so that my snare can trap more enemies. I'm not sure how many more it can trap, but because this build is totally based around suspending adds, I think this is the best option. The refit that makes suspension last longer could also be good though. It just depends on encounter design and how many adds you think you will be trapping. So onto the build itself, it is based around the exotic Titan legs Abeyant Leap. They have the exotic armor perk Puppeteer's Control. Dranger's Lash spawns 2 additional projectiles, tracks targets more aggressively, and travels further. Gain Woven Mail when suspending targets. So first off, the name of the armor perk is perfect as you quite literally feel like a puppeteer with this build. Just suspending all the enemies in sight and having complete control of the battlefield. Another thing I want to note is it doesn't matter how you suspend the target, be it with the trap on the bow, the shackle grenade, or from your barricade with Dranger's Lash. However you suspend the target, it will give you Woven Mail. So this is very valuable as it is always nice to have extra damage resistance in endgame content. So now that we know what the exotic does, let's look at the aspects. We have Dranger's Lash, which allows our barricade to suspend targets. And I recommend running this with Rally Barricade because it has a much shorter cooldown than Towering Barricade, so you can damn near chain your barricade ability. For the other aspect, we have Into the Fray, where destroying a tangle or casting your super grants Woven Mail for you and nearby allies. And when we have Woven, it increases our melee regen rate. This playstyle is typically at a distance, so this is better than Banner of War in my opinion. For this playstyle, that is. Banner is probably the strongest aspect in the entire game currently, but for what we are doing, I like Into the Fray. Moving on to the Fragments, this really brings the whole build together. We have Thread of Wisdom to create an Orb of Power when we defeat a suspended target. This does have a 10-second cooldown unfortunately, but even still, I was truly shocked at just how many orbs this build can generate thanks to this fragment. And more orbs means more supers and armor charge. Then we have Thread of Continuity. This makes our Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects last 50% longer. Very valuable with this build. Thread of Generation to give us grenade energy as we deal damage. This fragment is awesome as it helps us have a shackle grenade up whenever we need one. And lastly, Thread of Mind, where defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. This is based on the tier of combatant killed, but it is a pretty significant reduction. So then we have artifact mods that make this build even more OP. I know most of the mods are solar, but in the final 2 columns we have some great mods here. First is Unraveling Orbs. Picking up an Orb of Power grants strand weapons unraveling rounds. So when we kill a suspended target, we will make an orb. And then if we pick that orb up, we get unraveling rounds for our strand weapons, specifically the bow. And then we have Horde Shuttle, where damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. So when the enemies are suspended, it could also spawn a threadling to help take out the other suspended targets, as well as unraveling them, which deals even more damage. And because they are affected by a strand debuff, this will make them drop a tangle when they die. And then we can use that tangle to get Woven Mail thanks to Into the Fray, or just explode the tangle to do a bunch of damage to the suspended targets. Another fragment that you could run is Thread of Rebirth, where strand weapon funnel blows have a chance to create a threadling, but I think our other options here are better. It fully leans into the suspend everything playstyle. You have 3 ways to suspend enemies with your bow, grenade, and class ability, and they are all suspended longer thanks to Thread of Continuity, and our cooldowns are reduced by Thread of Generation and Thread of Mind. And then we even have armor mods that can further reduce these cooldowns. So on the helmet, we have Heavy Ammo Finder to help us get more heavy ammo. This is great on this build because most of our kills are coming from an exotic primary. And then from the artifact, we have Solar Strand Dual Siphon because I run solar weapons with the bow. And then a Harmonic Siphon so our orbs are more powerful when we make them with a strand weapon. On the arms, I run Grenade Kickstart to give us a chunk of grenade energy when we throw our Shackle Grenade. And then I have Impact Induction to reduce our grenade cooldown when we deal damage with a melee. Then we have Bolstering Detonation to give us class ability energy when we deal damage with a grenade. So again, it is all feeding into our suspension abilities. On the chest piece, just run whatever resist mods are most suited to the activity. On the legs, run a Scavenger for your heavy. And then I run Absolution for a chunk of energy to all my abilities on orb pickup. And then Recuperation for a chunk of health on orb pickup. But that was specifically because Birthplace of the Vile boss room is quite chaotic. You could swap this out for Innervation to reduce your grenade cooldown even more, or Insulation to reduce your class ability cooldown. And finally, we have the class item. We have Reaper so we can make an orb when we get a kill after casting our class ability. This is really easy to do as the ads just get suspended and are sitting there waiting to die. And then we have Distribution to reduce all ability cooldowns when we cast our Barricade near targets, and Bomber for a chunk of grenade energy when we cast our Barricade. So back to Reaper for a second, when we cast our class ability, Reaper will activate. This means we will make an orb of power on our next weapon kill. We then get a kill with the bow on a suspended target. This activates Thread of Wisdom for defeating a suspended target. So on our first kill, we make 2 orbs. Then if we follow up with another kill quickly, we make another orb thanks to Strand Siphon. So pretty much any time you kill enemies suspended by your Barricade, you make 3 orbs. This is great as those orbs feed our abilities. When we pick them up, it gives us Armor Charge for Grenade Kickstart and also reduces all our abilities thanks to Absolution. And it could also give grenade energy if you ran Innervation, or else it gives health thanks to Recuperation, which is what I had on. On top of this, I was using an Apex Predator with Explosive Light. So lots of times when I run solo GMs, it is hard to make enough orbs to keep Explosive Light always charged, but not at all with this build. And that is great in Birthplace of the Vile because at the start of each damage phase you have a champion to deal with, and there's quite a bit going on, so proccing Bait and Switch can be quite difficult. On top of this, with Bait and Switch, your first shot has no damage increase, and your second is 35% more. But with Explosive Light, both shots are 25% more damage, so it is more total damage than 2 rockets from Bait and Switch. Some other cool weapon synergy I want to talk about quickly is the sniper rifle that I used. I used this one for a very specific reason. I really wanted a last foray with Frenzy and no mag increasing perk. The reason being is because if a magazine has 3 or less, it can proc Flint Striker in just 1 shot, allowing us to have Radiant. This is really nice for ease of use. The Luna Regolith Vanguard Sniper is also an aggressive sniper that you can get a magazine of 3 with, but I love Frenzy so I was thrilled to get this role. So this loadout is kind of a passive player's dream. It allows you to easily play at a distance. You have Unstoppable Bow and Overload Rocket, and then if you need anti-barrier, simply shoot your sniper once and your sniper will have anti-barrier thanks to Radiant. And if there are no unstops or overloads, take that off your rocket and then that weapon will also have anti-barrier. Also, if you don't have Unstoppable Bow, your bow can also get anti-barrier rounds from Unraveling rounds from picking up an orb. Granted, this is far less consistent than proccing Radiant. As for build stats, you want 100 resilience for the damage resistance and the short barricade cooldown, and then you want 100 discipline to reduce your grenade cooldown. After that, just focus on recovery. I will say the Frenzied Blade melee is really nice in the boss room just as a movement tool for getting around and avoiding enemy fire. It is also decent for smacking a lone ad and making a tangled to give yourself Woven Mail, though it is far easier to get Woven Mail just by suspending targets. You can sub in whatever weapons you want outside of Wishkeeper, and hell, you don't even have to run this build with Wishkeeper. This build works almost just as well on its own, so if you wanted to run something else, go for it. Wishkeeper is just nice because it really leans into the suspend everything theme that the build is going for, and it is extremely easy to chain the Snare Weavers. You get 1 charge on a crit hit, and 2 charges on a crit kill, and it is extremely easy to get 3 crit kills when the enemies are suspended, allowing you to toss out another Snare Weaver trap right away. Not to mention, it does 50% more damage to suspended targets, and it gets a quicker draw time and faster reload when you suspend enemies. So it is a perfect pairing with this build. I gotta say, for my first time using the bow and the first time running Suspend Titan in a long time, I was extremely impressed with how well it performed. It is an amazingly strong build and great for locking down groups of enemies. I highly recommend giving it a try. And that is pretty much going to do it for the video. Let me know down in the comments if you've been liking Wishkeeper. Like I said, my initial thoughts were meh, but I knew I had to wait to see it in its final form before making my judgment, and I'm glad I gave it a shot. If you like this video, then leaving a like would really help me out, and subscribe for more awesome D2 content. I've been hard at work and have lots of good videos coming your way. Lastly, if you're still watching, then thanks so much for watching to the end. Enjoy suspending everything, and take care.